She bought my son a yacht, but slipped me numbers in a thank you note. When a black sedan circled my house, I had to choose, hide or counterattack. My daughter handed me a folded piece of paper, while her sister-in-law gleamed with pride beside a brand-new yacht worth more than my house. The contrast was so stark, it felt like a slap across the face. But what my daughter didn't know was that the seemingly worthless note she'd given me contained something that would change everything. By the end of this story, you'll understand why sometimes the smallest gestures carry the most devastating consequences. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. The marina stretched out before us like a playground for the wealthy, each slip occupied by vessels that cost more than most people make in a decade. I stood there in my best polo shirt, the one I'd worn to every family gathering for the past 3 years, watching my daughter Sarah bounce excitedly between two very different presentations. On my left, Chelsea, my daughter-in-law, stood radiant in her designer sundress beside a gleaming 42-foot yacht. The morning sun caught the chrome fixtures and reflected off the pristine white hull like something from a luxury magazine. A red bow the size of a small car adorned the bow, and champagne bottles waited on ice for what was clearly meant to be a celebration. On my right, I held a simple manila envelope with my name written in Sarah's careful handwriting. "Dad," Sarah had said just moments before, her voice bright with anticipation, "I wanted to do something special for both of you today. Chelsea, this is for you and David." She gestured toward the yacht with the flourish of a game show host, revealing the grand prize. "And Dad, this is for you." That's when she'd handed me the envelope. The weight difference was impossible to ignore. Chelsea's gift probably weighed 40,000 pounds and cost more than I'd earned in the last 5 years combined. My gift weighed less than a letter to the electric company. But here's what Sarah didn't understand about her father. 43 years of running a small accounting firm had taught me that the most important information often came in the smallest packages. Tax codes that could save or destroy businesses, audit findings that fit on index cards, bank statements that told stories their writers never intended to reveal. So while Chelsea was already planning her maiden voyage and posting photos on social media, I was studying the envelope in my hands with the methodical attention I'd learned from decades of examining financial documents. The envelope felt wrong. Not just light, but deliberately light, like someone had carefully considered its contents. The paper was expensive, cream-colored with a subtle watermark I recognized from the law firm where Sarah worked as a paralegal. This wasn't casual stationery. This was professional-grade paper, the kind used for important legal documents. I opened it carefully, the way I'd learned to handle sensitive paperwork, and found a single sheet folded once. But as I unfolded it, something caught my eye immediately. There were numbers written in pencil along the edge, so faint they were almost invisible unless you held the paper at the right angle to the light. The note itself was simple. "Dad, thank you for everything you've taught me about attention to detail and seeing what others miss. Your loving daughter, Sarah." But those numbers along the edge, they weren't random. After 4 decades of working with financial records, I recognized patterns when I saw them. These looked like coordinates, or maybe account numbers, or possibly something else entirely. But they were definitely intentional. Chelsea's voice cut through my concentration. "Oh my God, David, look at the master cabin. It has a king-size bed and a full entertainment system. We could live on this thing." David, my son, was grinning like he'd won the lottery, which in many ways he had. "Sarah, this is incredible. How did you even afford something like this?" Sarah's smile flickered for just a moment before returning to full brightness. "I've been saving for years, and I got a great deal from someone who needed to sell quickly. Plus, you know how much you and Chelsea love being on the water." The explanation sounded rehearsed, polished, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. But I'd heard that same tone from clients who were hiding something in their financial records. Sarah was my daughter, but she was also someone who'd grown up watching me spot inconsistencies in numbers and stories that didn't quite add up. I folded the note carefully and slipped it back into the envelope, but not before memorizing those faint numbers along the edge. My mind was already working, cataloging questions that needed answers. How does a paralegal afford a yacht that costs more than most houses? Why give me a note specifically mentioning attention to detail? And what did those numbers mean? Meanwhile, the celebration around the yacht was gaining momentum. Chelsea had found the champagne and was popping bottles while David explored every compartment like a kid in a toy store. Other marina guests were stopping to admire the vessel and congratulate the new owners. But Sarah kept glancing at me, her eyes searching my face for some reaction I wasn't ready to give her yet. "Dad," she said, walking over while Chelsea and David were distracted by the yacht's navigation system. "What do you think of your gift?" I looked at her carefully. This daughter I'd raised to be precise, analytical, someone who noticed details that others missed. The same qualities that had made her excellent at paralegal work were now making me wonder what game we were really playing here. "It's very thoughtful," I said, choosing my words as carefully as I'd choose which deductions to claim on a complicated tax return. The message about attention to detail resonates with me. Her smile became more genuine then, less performance and more relief. "I was hoping you'd appreciate it." "Sarah," I said quietly, making sure Chelsea and David couldn't hear us over their excited exploration of their new toy. "This is a very generous gift you've given your brother and sister-in-law." She nodded, but something in her expression had shifted. "Family is important, Dad. You taught me that. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the people we love." Sacrifices. The word hung between us like smoke from a fire that hadn't been properly extinguished. What kind of sacrifices was she talking about? And why did I have the feeling that the real story was hidden somewhere in the faint numbers penciled along the edge of my note? The marina sounds continued around us. Seagulls calling overhead, waves lapping against the hulls, the distant rumble of boat engines starting up for morning excursions. Normal sounds of a normal day that was turning out to be anything but normal. Chelsea appeared at David's side, her face flushed with excitement and champagne. "Sarah, I can't believe you did this for us. This yacht is worth more than our house." "Worth more than their house. Worth more than my house too, probably. Worth more than Sarah should have been able to afford on her salary, even with years of saving and a great deal from a motivated seller." I watched my daughter's face as Chelsea gushed about the gift, looking for those subtle tells I'd learned to recognize in clients who were stretching the truth about their financial situations. The slight tightening around the eyes when specific dollar amounts were mentioned. The way she changed the subject when Chelsea started asking technical questions about maintenance costs and insurance. Sarah was hiding something. The question was whether she was hiding it from all of us or just from Chelsea and David. The note in my hands suddenly felt heavier, more significant. If Sarah wanted me to pay attention to details and see what others missed, then she'd succeeded. I was seeing plenty that others were missing. The question was what I was supposed to do with what I was seeing. David emerged from below deck with the look of someone who'd just discovered buried treasure. "Sarah, the sound system down there is incredible. And the kitchen, galley, has everything. We could take this thing anywhere." Anywhere. The word echoed in my mind as I watched my son embrace his sister, thanking her for a gift that had fundamentally altered his lifestyle and probably his future. Meanwhile, I stood holding a piece of paper with a hidden message that I was only beginning to understand. But understanding would have to wait. Right now, I needed to play the role of proud father and grateful gift recipient, even as my accountant's instincts were screaming that nothing about this situation added up correctly. The celebration continued around me, but I was already planning my next moves. Those numbers on the edge of the paper weren't going to decode themselves, and Sarah's story about savings and great deals needed verification. After 43 years of following paper trails and uncovering financial secrets, I knew when someone was pointing me toward a mystery that needed solving. What I didn't know yet was whether my daughter was trying to warn me about something, or whether she was inviting me to become part of something that would challenge everything I thought I knew about my family. The yacht bobbed gently in its slip, sunlight dancing off its perfect surface, while the note in my pocket held secrets that were about to change all our lives in ways none of us could have imagined. The drive home from the marina felt longer than usual, even though I took the same route I'd driven countless times before. The envelope sat on my passenger seat like a passenger I wasn't quite ready to have a conversation with yet. Every red light gave me another opportunity to glance at it, and every glance reinforced my growing certainty that Sarah had given me far more than a simple thank you note. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I'd made a decision. Whatever those numbers meant, whatever Sarah was trying to tell me, I was going to find out tonight. The methodical part of my brain, The part that had built a successful accounting practice from nothing was already organizing an approach. Inside my home office, I spread the note flat on my desk under the bright LED lamp I used for detailed work. The numbers along the edge became clearer under direct light, and I could see there were actually two sets of them. The first looked like coordinates, precise to several decimal places. The second set was shorter, only 6 digits, but they had the familiar pattern of an account number or reference code. I reached for my laptop and opened Google Maps, entering the coordinates with the same precision I'd use for a tax calculation. The satellite view loaded slowly, revealing a location about 30 miles outside the city. Rural area, mostly farmland, with what appeared to be a large industrial building surrounded by empty fields. Interesting, but not immediately illuminating. The 6-digit number was more challenging. Without context, it could be anything. A bank account, a safety deposit box, a file reference, a case number from the law firm where Sarah worked. Too many possibilities to pursue without more information. But Sarah had been specific in her note. She'd mentioned attention to detail and seeing what others miss. She knew her father well enough to know that a mystery like this would consume me until I solved it. The question was whether she wanted me to solve it immediately or whether timing mattered. I leaned back in my desk chair and thought about the day's events from a different angle. Not just the yacht and the note, but the entire dynamic at the marina. Sarah's nervousness when Chelsea asked about costs. David's assumption that his sister had simply been incredibly generous. Chelsea's immediate acceptance of an explanation that didn't quite add up financially. And then there was Sarah's comment about sacrifices, about family being important, about sometimes having to make difficult choices for the people we love. My phone buzzed with a text message. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and for a moment I wondered if she somehow knew I was sitting here analyzing her gift. The message was simple. "Did you get a chance to really look at your note yet?" I stared at the text for a long moment before responding. "Just getting started. Should I be looking for something specific?" Her reply came quickly. "You'll know it when you find it. Trust your instincts, Dad. They've never led you wrong before. Trust your instincts." After 4 decades in accounting, my instincts were telling me that Sarah was involved in something complex, potentially risky, and definitely outside the normal boundaries of her paralegal salary and savings account. I turned back to the laptop and began a different kind of search. Public records, property databases, business registrations. If those coordinates pointed to something significant, there would be a paper trail somewhere. There always was. 20 minutes later, I found it. The coordinates led to a property owned by Meridian Holdings, LLC. A limited liability company registered 18 months ago with an address that matched the law firm where Sarah worked. The registered agent was listed as someone named Marcus Webb, but a quick search revealed that Marcus Webb was a common pseudonym used by corporate formation services. Meridian Holdings owned the industrial building at those coordinates, but the property records didn't indicate what kind of business operated there. No permits, no inspections, no public filings that would explain why a building in the middle of farmland needed to be hidden behind a shell company. But shell companies weren't necessarily illegal. I'd helped plenty of legitimate clients establish LLCs for privacy or tax purposes. The concerning part was that Sarah seemed to have inside knowledge of whatever Meridian Holdings was doing, and that knowledge had somehow enabled her to purchase a yacht worth more than most people's houses. My phone buzzed again. This time it was David, probably still riding high from his unexpected windfall. "Dad, can you believe Sarah did this for us? I mean, I knew she'd been doing well at the law firm, but this is incredible. Chelsea's already planning a weekend trip to the San Juan Islands." I chose my words carefully. "It's certainly generous. I'm curious about the details of how she managed something like this. She said she got a great deal from someone who needed to sell quickly. Plus, you know Sarah. She's always been good with money, and she's been working at that law firm for, 3 years now? Probably learned a lot about investments and financial planning from the lawyers there." David's explanation was logical, innocent, and completely failed to account for the mathematical reality of yacht ownership. Even with the best financial planning in the world, a paralegal's salary doesn't typically stretch to luxury vessels without some additional income source. "Has she mentioned any side projects or consulting work?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. "Not specifically, but she's been traveling more for work lately. Something about research projects and document collection. She mentioned they're working on some big cases that require a lot of field work. Field work, document collection, research projects. In my experience, those phrases could cover a multitude of activities, not all of them strictly within the bounds of traditional legal work. After David hung up, I returned to my investigation with renewed focus. If Sarah was involved in something that generated enough money to buy yachts, I needed to understand what that something was and whether it was putting her in danger. The 6-digit number from the note had been nagging at me, and I decided to approach it systematically. If it was an account number, it would need to be associated with a financial institution. If it was a reference code, it might correspond to a case file or legal document. If it was something else entirely, I'd need more clues. I opened my banking software and cross-referenced the number against various formats used by local banks and credit unions. No matches. Then, I tried federal case number formats, state court filing systems, and legal database reference codes. Still nothing. But as I was scrolling through different numbering systems, something caught my eye. The number had the right structure for a safety deposit box at First National Bank, the institution where I'd maintained my business accounts for over 20 years. Safety deposit boxes were private, secure, and typically used for storing valuable documents or items that someone didn't want kept at home or in a regular bank account. If Sarah had directed me to a safety deposit box, she was giving me access to something she considered both important and sensitive. The question was whether I was ready to find out what that something was. I looked at the clock on my computer screen. 8:15 p.m. on a Tuesday night. The bank would be closed until morning, which gave me several hours to consider whether I really wanted to follow this trail to its conclusion. Sarah was my daughter. I'd raised her, taught her my values, watched her grow into a capable and intelligent woman. But the evidence was mounting that she was involved in activities I didn't understand, funded by money I couldn't account for, and now she was drawing me into whatever web she'd created. The responsible thing would be to call her directly, demand an explanation, and insist on transparency about her financial situation and her gift-giving capabilities. The curious thing would be to visit the bank tomorrow morning and see if that 6-digit number actually opened a safety deposit box. The paternal thing would be to trust that my daughter knew what she was doing and had good reasons for the mysterious way she was handling this situation. But the accountant thing, the thing that had guided my professional life and kept my clients out of trouble for 4 decades, was to follow the evidence wherever it led and prepare for the possibility that the truth might be more complicated than anyone wanted it to be. I folded the note carefully and placed it in the center drawer of my desk, next to the business cards and tax forms that represented my orderly, predictable professional world. Tomorrow morning, I would find out whether Sarah's hidden message was an invitation or a warning. Either way, the celebration at the marina had been just the beginning of a story that was about to become much more complex than anyone had anticipated. First National Bank opened at 9 a.m. sharp, and I was waiting in the parking lot at 8:45. The same nervous energy that used to keep me awake before major client audits was coursing through my veins as I watched employees unlock the front doors and flip the sign from close to open. I'd spent the night alternating between rational explanations for Sarah's behavior and increasingly wild theories about what she might be involved in. By morning, I'd settled on a simple approach. Go to the bank, try the number, and let the evidence speak for itself. No assumptions, no premature conclusions, just methodical fact-gathering. The safety deposit box area was located in the bank's basement, behind a security door that required both a key card and a personal identification number. Margaret Chen, the customer service representative who'd handled my business accounts for 15 years, escorted me downstairs with professional courtesy that couldn't quite hide her curiosity about my unusual request. Box 847291, I said, reading from the note Sarah had given me. I believe I have access to this box. Margaret consulted her computer terminal, her fingers clicking across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. Yes, Mr. Patterson. You're listed as an authorized accessor on this box. The primary renter is Sarah Patterson, established 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Sarah had opened this safety deposit box 6 months before she bought David and Chelsea their yacht. The timing suggested planning, preparation, and a level of financial sophistication that didn't match the daughter I thought I knew. Margaret led me through the security protocols, checking my identification twice before producing a small silver key. "You'll need both keys to open the box," she explained, indicating the second key that hung from a chain around my neck. "Your daughter specifically requested that arrangement when she established the account. Except I'd never seen that key before in my life." Margaret seemed to notice my confusion. "She said you'd be wearing it when you came in. Something about it being a gift she gave you years ago that you never took off." I looked down at my chest, where my wedding ring hung on a simple gold chain. I'd started wearing it there after my wife passed away 3 years ago, unable to bear having it on my finger, but unwilling to put it away entirely. But now, looking more closely, I could see there was indeed a second key on the chain, so small and unremarkable that I'd never noticed it among the familiar weight of my wedding ring. Sarah had somehow added that key to my necklace without me realizing it. The realization sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the bank's air conditioning system. How long had she been planning this? And how had she managed to access something so personal without me knowing? The safety deposit box was located in a private viewing room, a small windowless space with a table and 2 chairs. Margaret placed the metal box on the table and left me alone with whatever secrets my daughter had hidden inside. The box was larger than I'd expected, roughly the size of a shoebox and surprisingly heavy. I lifted the lid with the same careful attention I'd used to open a client's confidential financial records. Inside were documents, lots of them, financial statements, legal contracts, property deeds, and photographs. But also something I hadn't expected, a sealed envelope with my name written in Sarah's handwriting, along with instructions that said, "Read this first." I opened the envelope and found a letter that began with words that made my hands tremble. "Dad, if you're reading this, it means I'm either dead or in serious trouble, and you're the only person I trust to handle what comes next." The letter continued for 3 pages, written in Sarah's careful script, explaining a situation that was far more complex and dangerous than I'd imagined possible. She described her work at the law firm not as simple paralegal duties, but as part of a specialized team that handled asset recovery for clients who'd been victims of financial fraud. According to Sarah's letter, the yacht she'd given David and Chelsea wasn't purchased with her savings. It was seized property recovered from a criminal organization that had been using luxury assets to launder money through fake real estate transactions. The law firm had been contracted by federal authorities to locate and catalog these assets, and Sarah's job involved identifying and securing items before they could be moved or sold. The yacht was supposed to be sold at auction, her letter explained, but there was a problem with the paperwork that would have delayed the sale for months. David and Chelsea have been struggling financially since his layoff, and I knew they needed something to give them hope. So I worked out an arrangement where they could take possession temporarily, with the understanding that they might have to return it eventually. Temporarily. The word hit me like a physical blow. Sarah had given my son and daughter-in-law a gift that might be taken away from them without warning. They were out there right now, planning weekend trips and showing off their new lifestyle, completely unaware that their yacht could disappear as suddenly as it had appeared. But the letter continued with even more disturbing revelations. The criminal organization they'd been investigating wasn't just involved in money laundering. They were part of a larger network that specialized in identity theft, insurance fraud, and what Sarah described as financial terrorism against elderly and vulnerable populations. "The reason I'm writing this letter," Sarah's letter continued, "is that we've discovered the organization has been targeting people in our area. Dad, I think they may have been watching our family. I've seen evidence that they research their victims extensively, looking for family connections and financial vulnerabilities they can exploit." My chest tightened as I read her next words. "I'm worried about you, Dad. Your accounting practice, your client relationships, your reputation in the community, all of that makes you a perfect target for the kind of sophisticated fraud these people specialize in. If something happens to me, if I disappear or if there's an accident, you need to assume that they've moved against our family." The letter went on to detail specific steps I should take to protect myself, my business, and my remaining family members. Contact information for federal agents she'd been working with, account numbers for secure financial institutions where she'd moved money to keep it safe, legal documents that would transfer certain assets to David and Chelsea if she couldn't complete the process herself. But the most chilling part came at the end of the letter. Dad, the coordinates I gave you lead to a warehouse where we've been storing recovered assets. If you're reading this letter, it means something has gone wrong and the warehouse may be compromised. There are items there worth millions of dollars and dangerous people who will do anything to get them back. Don't go there alone. Don't go there at all unless you're absolutely certain I'm not coming back. I set the letter down with shaking hands and looked at the other documents in the safety deposit box. Bank statements showing accounts I'd never heard of, all in Sarah's name, containing amounts that made my head spin. Legal contracts with federal agencies I couldn't pronounce. Photographs of expensive cars, jewelry, artwork, and other luxury items that were apparently part of the asset recovery operation. And at the bottom of the box, something that made my blood run cold. A newspaper clipping from 2 weeks ago with a headline that read, "Local attorney missing after investigating financial fraud ring." The article described the disappearance of Marcus Webb, the same name that had been listed as the registered agent for Meridian Holdings. Marcus Webb wasn't a pseudonym used by a corporate formation service. He was a real person, a lawyer who'd been working on the same case as Sarah, and now he was missing. I fumbled for my phone and tried calling Sarah's number, but it went straight to voicemail. Her cheerful recorded message asking callers to leave their name and number sounded impossibly normal after everything I'd just learned. The room felt smaller suddenly, the walls closing in as I realized the magnitude of what my daughter had been involved in. She wasn't just a paralegal who'd gotten lucky with a yacht purchase. She was an undercover operative working with federal authorities to take down a criminal organization, and that organization might have discovered her identity. The yacht she'd given David and Chelsea wasn't just a generous gift. It was evidence in a federal investigation, and everyone connected to it was potentially in danger. I gathered the documents back into the safety deposit box, my mind racing through implications and possibilities. Sarah's instructions were clear. Don't go to the warehouse alone. Contact the federal agents she'd been working with. Protect the family by keeping them away from anything connected to the investigation. But as I locked the box and prepared to leave the bank, one thought kept echoing in my mind. If Sarah was right about being watched, if the criminal organization had identified our family as targets, then David and Chelsea's celebration at the marina yesterday might have been observed by people who now knew exactly where to find the yacht they were looking for. The gift Sarah had given her brother wasn't just temporary, it might be deadly. I climbed the stairs from the bank's basement on unsteady legs, Margaret Chen's polite goodbye barely registering as I walked toward the exit. The morning sunlight felt harsh after the controlled environment of the safety deposit box room, and I stood in the parking lot trying to process everything I'd learned. My daughter was either a hero working with federal authorities to take down dangerous criminals, or she was involved in something illegal herself and had created an elaborate story to protect her family from the consequences. After 43 years of examining financial records and detecting inconsistencies, I knew that both explanations could be partially true at the same time. What I needed now was verification, independent confirmation of Sarah's story before I decided how to protect David and Chelsea from whatever storm was coming. The business card Sarah had left in the safety deposit box bore the name Agent Rebecca Martinez, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Financial Crimes Division. A phone number with a Washington, D.C. area code was printed below her name, along with a note in Sarah's handwriting that said, "Tell her you're calling about Operation Tidal Wave." Operation Tidal Wave. Even the name sounded like something from a spy thriller rather than my quiet family's reality. But I'd come too far to stop investigating now. I drove home in a daze, Sarah's letter and the federal agent's business card burning like radioactive materials in my jacket pocket. The familiar streets of my neighborhood looked different now, as if I was seeing them through the eyes of someone who might be watching my family, cataloging our routines, planning some kind of attack on our financial security. At home, I sat in my office staring at Agent Martinez's business card for 20 minutes before I found the courage to dial her number. The phone rang twice before a crisp, professional voice answered. "Agent Martinez, Financial Crimes Division." "Agent Martinez, my name is Robert Patterson. I'm calling about Operation Tidal Wave. I believe you've been working with my daughter, Sarah Patterson." The silence on the other end of the line lasted long enough for me to wonder if the call had been disconnected. When Agent Martinez spoke again, her voice carried a new urgency. "Mr. Patterson, where are you calling from? Are you somewhere secure?" "I'm at home, in my office. Agent Martinez, I need to know what's happened to my daughter." Another pause, shorter this time. "Mr. Patterson, I'm going to need you to listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Do not discuss this conversation with anyone else until I give you permission. Do not leave your house today unless it's absolutely necessary. And do not, under any circumstances, attempt to contact your daughter through normal channels." My grip tightened on the phone. "Is she alive?" "Beipo." "As far as we know, yes. But Mr. Patterson, Operation Tidal Wave has been compromised. We have reason to believe that several of our assets, including your daughter, have been identified by the criminal organization we've been investigating. We've been trying to locate Sarah for the past 48 hours. 48 hours. Sarah had been missing since Sunday, the day before she'd given David the yacht and me the mysterious note, which meant that everything that had happened at the marina had been planned before she disappeared, a final arrangement to protect her family and provide clues that would lead me to the truth. "Agent Martinez," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "my son and daughter-in-law are in possession of a yacht that my daughter gave them yesterday. According to the letter Sarah left for me, that yacht is evidence in your investigation." Jesus Christ! Agent Martinez's professional composure cracked slightly. "Mr. Patterson, we need to get that yacht secured immediately. The people we're dealing with don't just steal money. They eliminate anyone who can connect them to their assets." The room spun around me as the full implications of Sarah's gift became clear. She hadn't just given David and Chelsea a yacht. She'd painted a target on their backs and mine, marking us as people who knew too much about a criminal organization that was willing to kill to protect their secrets. "Agent Martinez," I said, forcing my voice to remain calm despite the terror clawing at my chest, "what exactly are we dealing with here?" Her response came quickly, with the efficiency of someone who'd delivered bad news too many times before. "The Kozlov organization. Russian-backed financial terrorists who've been operating on the West Coast for the past 18 months. They specialize in targeting middle-class families, stealing their identities, liquidating their assets, and then eliminating anyone who might be able to identify them." I sank deeper into my desk chair, the familiar comfort of my home office suddenly feeling like a trap. "And my daughter was investigating them?" "Your daughter was one of our best assets. She had a gift for identifying patterns in financial documents that our trained agents missed. The law firm where she worked was a cover operation, Mr. Patterson. Sarah wasn't just a paralegal. She was a forensic accountant working directly with the FBI, a forensic accountant. My daughter had followed in my footsteps without me ever knowing it, using the same analytical skills I'd taught her to track criminals instead of tax deductions. The pride I felt was immediately overwhelmed by the realization of how much danger she'd put herself in. "Agent Martinez, I need you to understand something. My son and his wife have no idea what they've gotten into. They think the yacht was a generous gift from Sarah's savings. They're planning weekend trips, showing it off to friends. They're completely exposed." "I understand, Mr. Patterson, and we're going to fix this. But I need you to follow my instructions exactly. First, do not contact David or Chelsea directly. Any communication with them needs to go through secure channels that I'll provide. Second, I'm sending a team to your location within the hour to establish a protective perimeter around your house." "A protective perimeter?" The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. 24 hours ago, my biggest concern had been whether to refinance my mortgage. Now I needed federal protection from Russian criminals. "Mr. Patterson, the Kozlov organization doesn't just steal money. They study their targets for months before making their move. They know your routines, your relationships, your vulnerabilities. If they've identified your family as connected to our investigation, they're probably already planning their next steps." I looked around my office, seeing it through the eyes of someone who might have been watching me for months. The large window that faced the street, perfect for surveillance. The predictable schedule that took me to the same bank, the same grocery store, the same gas station every week. The client files that contained sensitive financial information about dozens of local families. What about my business, my clients? That's actually one of our biggest concerns. Your accounting practice gives you access to financial information that the Kozlov organization could use to expand their operations. They might try to coerce you into providing client data, or they might simply eliminate you to prevent you from identifying their money laundering schemes. The methodical way Agent Martinez discussed my potential elimination sent ice through my veins. This wasn't a movie or a television show. These were real people talking about really killing me because my daughter had been brave enough to help stop them. Agent Martinez, there's something else you need to know. The coordinates Sarah gave me, the ones that lead to the warehouse. She warned me not to go there alone, but she also said there were millions of dollars worth of recovered assets stored there. The silence on the other end of the line stretched long enough for me to hear my own heartbeat. When Agent Martinez spoke again, her voice carried a weight that made my chest tighten. Mr. Patterson, we lost contact with the warehouse facility 36 hours ago. Our last communication indicated that someone had breached the security system. We've been assuming the Kozlov organization discovered the location and moved the assets. But if they got the assets back, why would they still be interested in my family? Because your daughter documented everything. Every transaction, every asset recovery, every connection between the criminal organization and their money laundering operations. That documentation is worth more to them than the physical assets we recovered. I thought about the safety deposit box, the photographs of expensive cars and jewelry, the bank statements showing millions of dollars in recovered funds. Sarah hadn't just been collecting evidence. She'd been building a case that could destroy an entire criminal network. Where is that documentation now? That's what we've been trying to figure out. Sarah was supposed to deliver everything to our secure facility last Monday, but she never showed up. We've been operating under the assumption that she either hid the evidence or was captured before she could turn it over. The pieces were starting to fit together in a pattern that made my accountant's brain both satisfied and terrified. Sarah had discovered she was in danger. She'd hidden the evidence somewhere safe, given David and Chelsea the yacht as both a gift and a distraction, and left me clues that would lead federal agents to the truth if something happened to her. But she'd also painted targets on all of our backs in the process. Agent Martinez, I think I know where Sarah hid the documentation. Where? I looked at the note on my desk, thinking about Sarah's message about attention to detail and seeing what others missed. The safety deposit box had contained one envelope addressed to me, but there had been space for more. And Sarah was too thorough to put all her evidence in one location. There are more safety deposit boxes. The numbers she gave me weren't just coordinates and a box number. They were a sequence, a pattern that leads to multiple locations. Mr. Patterson, I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't try to solve this on your own. Don't go to any more banks. Don't follow any more clues. My team will be at your house in 20 minutes and we'll work through this together. What about David and Chelsea? What about the yacht? We'll handle that. But Mr. Patterson, I need you to understand something. Your daughter may have saved dozens of families from financial ruin, but she also made herself and everyone connected to her a target for people who kill witnesses as a matter of routine business practice. I hung up the phone and sat in the sudden quiet of my office, surrounded by the ordinary papers and files that represented my normal, predictable life. Tax returns, client statements, business licenses, all the mundane documents that had defined my existence for 4 decades. But now I understood that normal was over. Whatever happened next, whether we found Sarah alive or whether we managed to stay ahead of the people hunting us, my family would never be the same. The yacht bobbing peacefully in its marina slip was no longer a symbol of Sarah's generosity. It was bait in a trap that had been set by criminals who viewed murder as just another business expense. And somewhere out there, my daughter was either hiding or captured, depending on her father to be smart enough and brave enough to finish what she'd started. I looked at my watch. 18 minutes until Agent Martinez's team arrived. 18 minutes to figure out if there was anything else Sarah had hidden in plain sight, any other clues that might help us find her before it was too late. The note lay on my desk, innocent-looking paper that had started this entire nightmare. But as I studied it one more time, I noticed something I'd missed before. The watermark in the expensive paper wasn't just decorative. It was a pattern, repeated across the sheet in a way that looked random but felt deliberate. Sarah had taught me to look for what others missed. Now I was beginning to understand that everything she'd given me, every seemingly simple gesture, contained layers of meaning that went deeper than I'd imagined. The watermark pattern looked like numbers when held up to the light at the right angle. More coordinates, more account numbers, more clues in the treasure hunt my daughter had created to save her family and destroy the people who threatened us. But Agent Martinez had been clear. Don't try to solve this alone. Don't follow any more clues. The problem was, I was an accountant. Following clues and solving puzzles was what I did for a living. And if Sarah was counting on me to find her, then sitting in my office waiting for federal agents might be the one thing I couldn't afford to do. Outside, a black sedan with tinted windows pulled slowly past my house. It might have been Agent Martinez's advance team, or it might have been someone else entirely. Someone who'd been watching my family for months, learning our patterns, preparing to make their move. I picked up Sarah's note and walked to my window, studying the watermark pattern in the natural light. The numbers were definitely there, faint but unmistakable once you knew to look for them. My daughter was brilliant, methodical, and had inherited every analytical instinct I'd tried to teach her over the years. If she was still alive, if there was still time to find her, then the answer was hidden somewhere in the puzzle she'd created. The question was whether I was brave enough to solve it, and whether the people coming for my family would give me the chance. The black sedan made another pass by my house, slower this time, and I realized that 18 minutes might be 17 minutes too many. Sarah's final gift to her family wasn't just a yacht and a mystery. It was a test of whether her father had learned the same lessons about courage and sacrifice that she'd somehow mastered without me ever knowing it. I folded the note carefully and slipped it into my jacket pocket next to my car keys and wallet. Agent Martinez could establish her protective perimeter around an empty house. I had a daughter to find and a family to save, and the clock was already running out on both. The back door of my house opened onto the alley behind Maple Street, a route I'd used for 40 years to take out garbage and retrieve packages when delivery drivers couldn't find the front entrance. Today it would serve as my escape from whatever surveillance had been established around my property. I grabbed my emergency cash from the bedroom safe, the same $2,000 I'd kept hidden since my wife passed away, money she'd insisted I maintain for situations that couldn't wait for banks to open or credit cards to process. I'd never imagined using it to fund a rescue mission for my missing daughter, but life had a way of making the impossible feel routine. My truck started quietly in the garage, and I backed out through the alley with the lights off, using muscle memory from decades of early morning departures for client emergencies. The black sedan was still circling the front of my house when I turned onto Oak Street, heading toward downtown and whatever answers Sarah's watermark pattern might reveal. The numbers from the watermark led me to Second National Bank, a smaller institution across town where I'd never maintained accounts. But Sarah apparently had, because when I approached the customer service desk with the account number hidden in her notes paper fibers, the representative nodded with recognition. "Mr. Patterson, we've been expecting you. Ms. Patterson left specific instructions that you'd be arriving today and that time would be critical." Expecting me. Sarah had planned for this exact scenario, had somehow known that I'd decode her message and follow the trail despite federal warnings to stay put. The realization sent chills through me that had nothing to do with the bank's air conditioning. The safety deposit box at Second National was larger than the first one and heavier. Inside, I found what looked like the complete financial records of the Kozlov organization's operations. Bank routing numbers, shell company registrations, property transfers, and a detailed map showing money laundering routes that stretched from Seattle to Los Angeles. But more importantly, I found a second letter from Sarah, this one dated 3 days ago. "Dad, if you're reading this, it means you ignored Agent Martinez's advice and followed the clues anyway. I was counting on that. Your curiosity and analytical nature are the only things that can save me now." The letter explained that Agent Martinez was legitimate, but that Operation Tidal Wave had been compromised from the beginning. Someone inside the FBI had been feeding information to the Kozlov organization, warning them about raids, asset seizures, and undercover operations. Each show. "I discovered the leak 2 weeks ago," Sarah wrote, "and I've been feeding false information through official channels ever since. The yacht I gave David isn't just recovered property. It's a tracking device. The Kozlov organization thinks it contains a hidden compartment with encrypted financial records that could destroy their entire network. A tracking device. My son and daughter-in-law were sailing around Puget Sound in what amounted to electronic bait, completely unaware that their every movement was being monitored by both federal agents and Russian criminals. The real encrypted records are hidden in a place only you would think to look, Sarah's letter continued. Remember when you taught me about the importance of backup systems? About never keeping all your important documents in one location? I learned that lesson better than you know. I thought about my own business practices, the redundant filing systems I'd maintained for decades, the off-site storage facilities where I kept copies of critical client documents. Sarah had been watching me work since she was old enough to walk, absorbing lessons about organization and security that I'd never formally taught her. The answer hit me like a revelation. Sarah hadn't hidden the real evidence in safety deposit boxes or federal facilities. She'd hidden it in my own backup storage system, the climate-controlled unit across town, where I'd been keeping client archives for the past 15 years. My storage unit was located in an industrial complex that stayed open 24 hours, accessible only with a key card and personal identification code. I'd visited it so rarely in recent years that I'd almost forgotten it existed, which made it the perfect hiding place for someone who understood my habits and routines. Unit 247 looked exactly as I'd left it 6 months ago, filled with bankers' boxes containing tax records and financial documents dating back to the early days of my practice. But when I moved the boxes aside, I found something that definitely hadn't been there before. A waterproof case with combination locks that required the same numbers Sarah had hidden in her various notes. Inside the case were hard drives, USB memory sticks, and printed documents that represented what looked like years of investigation into the Kozlov organization's activities. Bank records showing millions of dollars in fraudulent transactions, identity theft schemes targeting elderly Americans, money laundering operations that used luxury assets like yachts, cars, and jewelry to move criminal proceeds across international borders. But the most shocking discovery was a video recording dated 1 week ago. Sarah's face appeared on my phone screen, her voice steady despite the obvious stress in her expression. "Dad, if you're watching this, it means I'm either dead or captured, and you've followed my clues to their conclusion. What you're looking at is evidence that could destroy the Kozlov organization completely, but it's also evidence that could get everyone we love killed." The video continued with Sarah explaining that she'd discovered the identity of the FBI mole, and that Agent Martinez was not who she claimed to be. The real Agent Martinez had been killed 3 months earlier, and her identity had been assumed by someone working directly for the Kozlov organization. "The woman you spoke with today isn't trying to protect our family," Sarah said on the recording. "She's trying to locate this evidence so it can be destroyed. The protective perimeter around your house isn't protection, it's surveillance. They're waiting for you to lead them to exactly where you are right now." My blood went cold as I realized the magnitude of my mistake. I'd followed Sarah's clues perfectly, but I'd also provided a trail that could be followed by people who wanted to eliminate every trace of the investigation. The fake Agent Martinez probably knew exactly where I was, and her team was likely already on their way to the storage facility. Sarah's video continued with specific instructions that made my hands shake as I listened. "Dad, you need to contact the real FBI, but you need to do it in a way that doesn't alert the mole. Use the emergency contact information I've hidden in your office desk, the numbers written inside your tax code reference book. Tell them about Operation Tidal Wave, but don't mention Agent Martinez or anyone else you've already spoken with." I gathered the hard drives and documents, my mind racing through escape routes and communication options. The storage facility had only one vehicle entrance, which made it easy to control but also easy to trap someone inside. If I was being followed, I'd need to find another way out. The industrial complex backed up to a freight rail line that carried cargo trains through the city every hour. The fence between the storage facility and the railroad tracks was old and poorly maintained, with gaps that someone my size could squeeze through if necessary. As I loaded Sarah's evidence into a backpack I'd found in my storage unit, I heard the distant sound of vehicles approaching. Multiple engines, driving fast but trying to stay quiet. The kind of coordinated movement that suggested professional surveillance rather than random traffic. I switched off the lights in my storage unit and moved toward the back of the facility, where the fence line offered potential escape routes. Through the gap in the chain link, I could see a freight train approaching from the east, its headlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon of possibility. The train was moving slowly, probably 30 miles per hour, the kind of speed that made jumping aboard dangerous but not impossible. I'd done stupider things in my youth, though none with the stakes this high. Behind me, I could hear car doors slamming and voices coordinating a search of the facility. Professional voices, calm and efficient, the kind that belonged to people who'd done this before and expected to succeed. I squeezed through the fence gap just as the train's first car passed my position, grabbing onto a ladder rung with both hands and pulling myself up onto the moving freight car. The backpack containing Sarah's evidence felt like it weighed 100 pounds as I climbed, but I held on with the desperation of someone who understood that dropping it would mean death for everyone I loved. The train carried me east through the industrial district, past warehouses and processing plants that looked like monuments to a different era. From my perch on the freight car, I could see vehicle lights converging on the storage facility I'd just escaped, confirming that my instincts about being followed had been correct. But I'd succeeded in getting Sarah's evidence away from the people who wanted to destroy it. Now I needed to figure out how to get it to someone who could actually use it to save my daughter and stop the criminals who'd turned my family into targets. The train began to slow as it approached the downtown rail yard, giving me an opportunity to jump off before it stopped completely. I landed hard on the gravel beside the tracks, my knees protesting the impact, but managed to keep the backpack secure as I rolled away from the moving train. Downtown Seattle at night was a different world from the quiet suburban neighborhoods where I'd spent most of my adult life. Homeless camps under highway overpasses, late-night businesses that catered to people who operated outside normal schedules, and enough ambient noise to mask the movements of someone trying to stay hidden. I found a 24-hour internet cafe near the waterfront, the kind of place that catered to travelers and night shift workers who needed computer access at unusual hours. For $20, I bought 2 hours of internet time and began following Sarah's instructions for contacting the real FBI. The emergency numbers she'd hidden in my tax reference book connected me to a duty officer at the Bureau's Seattle field office, someone who'd apparently been waiting for contact related to Operation Tidal Wave. "Mr. Patterson," the duty officer said after I'd identified myself using the code phrases Sarah had provided, "we've been looking for you. Agent Martinez reported that you'd gone missing from your residence." "Agent Martinez is working for the people who kidnapped my daughter," I said, keeping my voice low despite the background noise of the internet cafe. "I have evidence that proves the Kozlov organization has infiltrated your investigation." The silence on the other end of the line lasted long enough for me to wonder if the call had been disconnected. When the duty officer spoke again, his voice carried a new urgency. "Mr. Patterson, we need to meet immediately, but not at any location that Agent Martinez might know about. Do you know the Pike Place Market?" Pike Place Market at 3 in the morning was nearly deserted, but the few vendors who maintained overnight operations provided enough activity to mask a clandestine meeting. I waited by the fish-throwing counter, Sarah's evidence backpack clutched against my chest like body armor. Special Agent David Kim appeared exactly on schedule, identifying himself with the same code phrases Sarah had used in her video message. He was younger than I'd expected, probably in his 30s, with the kind of intense focus that suggested he'd been working this case for a very long time. "Mr. Patterson, your daughter has been missing for 4 days. We've been operating under the assumption that she was either killed or taken to force her to reveal the location of evidence that could destroy the Kozlov organization." "She wasn't taken," I said, pulling out one of the hard drives Sarah had hidden. "She went into hiding after she discovered that Agent Martinez was working for the criminals. Everything that's happened since then, including the yacht she gave my son, was designed to flush out the mole and protect the evidence." Agent Kim's eyes widened as he examined the hard drive. "Mr. Patterson, if this contains what I think it contains, your daughter may have just handed us the biggest financial crime bust in FBI history. Where is she now?" "That's what we're going to find out. But first we need to make sure your son and daughter-in-law are safe. The yacht they're sailing isn't just a tracking device, it's bait in a trap that's about to be sprung, and they're in the middle of it." As we left Pike Place Market, heading toward Agent Kim's vehicle, I realized that Sarah's gift had been even more complex than I'd understood. She hadn't just given David and Chelsea a yacht and me a mystery to solve. She'd orchestrated an entire counterintelligence operation designed to expose corruption within the FBI while protecting the evidence that could save countless families from financial ruin. But the most important question remained unanswered. Was my brilliant, brave daughter still alive to see her plan succeed, or had her sacrifice been the final gift she'd given to save the rest of us? The answer would determine whether this story ended with justice or tragedy, and whether the yacht bobbing peacefully in Elliott Bay would become a symbol of Sarah's victory or a memorial to her courage. Either way, the game she'd started was about to reach its conclusion, and none of us would emerge unchanged from whatever came next. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.